Friends, greetings. My name is Ihor Havryshchak. Today is July 31st, Thursday. Let's talk about and analyze the most important news from this world. If you are new to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. We work for you every day and update our analytics. The enemy launched a missile and drone attack on the capital of Ukraine. First, there was a night drone attack. Then terrorists struck with missiles as Ukrainian civilians were returning from the subway. This is Vladimir Putin's response to Donald Trump's ultimatum, after Trump said the Kremlin was silent. Since the evening of July 30th, Russian occupiers have been attacking Kyiv with drones. Explosions were heard in the city. There was destruction and casualties. The State Emergency Service reported that the wreckage of one of the drones fell on a garage cooperative, causing a gas pipe in a 3-story residential building to catch fire. Several people were trapped in the garages, but rescuers quickly evacuated them. In another part of the district, drone fragments hit a residential building, causing an apartment fire and damaging several cars in the yard. 4 victims were taken to medics. The fire was extinguished. According to the State Emergency Service, a drone also hit one of Kyiv's higher education institutions. The strike damaged buildings in several districts. On the morning of July 31st, Russia launched a missile strike on Kyiv after a nighttime drone attack. The debris damaged the roof of a 5-story building, a warehouse, and caused a car to catch fire. It happened in the evening. In the morning, when Ukrainians were returning home, the enemy cynically launched a missile attack. 2 waves of attacks have resulted in dozens of deaths and dozens of injuries. As of the morning of July 31st, 6 people were confirmed dead in Kyiv, including a 6-year-old boy. 4 were killed in Sviatoshinsky district, 2 in Solomyansky district. A child is among the dead. Our condolences to the families and friends. This is the response of the Kremlin terrorists to the peace ultimatum. You cannot talk to them. There is nothing to talk about. They know only power and fear, only power. The daughter of Donald Trump's special representative for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, was one of the first to react to the morning's strike among the international community. She wrote in the microblog X, Megan Mobbs wrote, "No doubt this is Vladimir Putin's response to President Donald Trump's deadline. He senses America's resolve and strength. We must not show weakness." She later added that the occupiers launched missiles at the city after civilians left their shelters and returned home. Russia is sending a deliberate message to America and the West. We're not afraid of you, and it's right. Vladimir Putin does not care about the efforts of our partners. There can be no compromise, there must be action, because the proposals from the United States and European countries, in particular France and Italy, which provided their airspace for Valentina Matvienko to fly to a conference in Geneva, make no sense. At the same time, civilian Ukrainians and children are being killed. This is happening because the West and the United States want to negotiate. There is nothing to talk about. US President Donald Trump has announced that he will impose 25.5% tariffs on India starting August 1st. He will also add an additional penalty for purchasing energy from Russia. Daniel Bloomberg reported that Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social that the United States and India have some of the highest tariffs in the world and the toughest and most unpleasant non-tariff trade barriers of any country. Donald Trump writes that India has always bought most of its military equipment from Russia and is one of the largest buyers of Russian energy, along with China, at a time when the world is calling on Russia to stop killing in Ukraine. Therefore, starting August 1st, India will pay duties of 25% plus a fine for these actions, the President of the United States said. These are not the 100% duties that Donald Trump threatens to impose after the 10-day period. It's 25% separately. Theoretically, it could be 125%. These duties dash New Delhi's hopes for preferential treatment of regional partners. India was one of the first countries to start negotiations with Washington after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the White House, but then the agreements were suspended. The United States is India's largest trading partner and main export market. In 2024, the volume of bilateral trade between New Delhi and Washington was almost $128 billion. Donald Trump published another post this morning Kyiv time, in which he mentioned Dmitry Medvedev and India. He wrote, "I don't care what India does to Russia. They can ruin their economies. I don't care. We have very little cooperation with India. Their tariffs are too high, one of the highest in the world." Donald Trump is wrong about the level of cooperation here, because the volume of trade is significant. Similarly, Russia and the United States hardly cooperate with each other. Let's leave it at that and tell Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president who still thinks he's president, to watch his mouth. He is entering dangerous territory, Donald Trump wrote. Obviously, he was referring to a post on Dmitry Medvedev's social media, where he stated that all of Donald Trump's actions and ultimatums were bringing the war closer, not between Russia and Ukraine, but between Russia and the United States. The United States has developed a mechanism for transferring weapons to Ukraine and selling them. This is an initiative of the Republican Party of the United States, Donald Trump's fellow party members. They have created a scheme to arm Ukraine with American weapons at the expense of European countries. According to the Wall Street Journal, 2 leading senators have outlined a plan that allows allies to finance the supply of weapons and military equipment to Kyiv. They follow U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal to raise billions of dollars annually for the war effort. The bill proposed by Senators Roger Wicker and Jim Risch is the most detailed description to date of how Donald Trump can implement his new plan to supply Kyiv with weapons and is the most efficient and effective. Importantly, Roger Wicker chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee and Jim Risch chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which gives the bill weight on Capitol Hill. Their bill would create a fund at the U.S. Treasury Department to receive funds from allies. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Huckabee can use this fund to pay contractors who replenish U.S. arsenals so that the Pentagon can continue to supply weapons to Ukraine without undermining the combat capability of the United States. According to GOP aides, the fund is expected to generate between $5 billion and $8 billion a year. The United Kingdom and Germany are considered likely donors to replenish the fund. A separate fund will be created at the U.S. Treasury Department to accumulate funds for Ukraine's armaments. This is a separate mechanism for cooperation with Ukraine and a powerful signal of support. European countries may take loans. Ukraine's allies are planning to ask the European Union for tens of billions of euros in loans to jointly purchase weapons for Ukraine and strengthen their own defense capabilities. This was reported by Politico. European countries can send loans to the fund under the United States Department of the Treasury. The deadline for applications under the €150 billion Security Assistance Program for Europe expires on Tuesday. The fund, created this spring with €150 billion, allows European countries to take loans. Some EU representatives said they are considering using these funds to help Ukraine. The lending scheme was proposed by the European Commission in Berlin. As part of the ReArm Europe program announced by Ursula von der Leyen, Europe is planning a multi-billion-dollar rearmament program. The program is aimed at stimulating Europe's defense industry and reducing its long-standing dependence on the United States. Ursula von der Leyen has officially expressed interest in applying for loans. Belgium, Bulgaria, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Spain, Finland, Hungary, and Lithuania have agreed to participate. A fund will be set up in the United States, and in Europe there is a possibility of receiving funds on credit. Many countries support this mechanism. More weapons are needed for Ukraine's defense forces, additional Western weapons to effectively deter the enemy and prevent them from advancing. There is a decree from the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, on the need to comply with security requirements at training grounds and training centers that are regularly attacked by Russian troops. The training process should be moved underground as much as possible. Oleksandr Syrsky emphasized this in his post on the official Facebook page. During the monthly training meeting, Oleksandr Syrsky reminded that according to the updated program of basic general military training, the course will last 51 days. The program of adaptation and preparation of servicemen for combat operations upon arrival from training centers to military units has also been updated. Most importantly, the training will be moved as deep underground as possible, as the occupiers' reconnaissance drones are adjusting their Iskander missile attacks on training centers. Ukrainian ballistics has been discussed a lot, and it was mentioned again by the newly appointed Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal. Denis Shmyhal said Ukraine is close to developing its own ballistic missiles. In a BBC Ukraine interview, he confirmed the president's announcement and said, "We are very close to this." This is all he could say publicly.
Президент України вже анонсував, що Україна буде мати свою балістику. Ми дуже до цього близькі. Це, у принципі, все, що я публічно можу сказати з цього приводу.
In June, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the successful test of Ukraine's Sapsan ballistic missile. He also noted that the Sapsan missile had already been tested against enemy positions. Valentin Badrak, director of the Center for Army, Conversion and Disarmament Studies, said that it would take several months to deploy a full production cycle of Sapsan missiles in Ukraine. According to Valentin Badrak, the Sapsan missile will be able to cover a distance of up to 500 kilometers. Ukraine announced the development of its own ballistic missiles back in 2023. Now it is 2025. But it does not yet have ballistic missiles, which are the most difficult to intercept for both Ukraine and the occupiers. Drones are used, and sometimes a cruise missile is reported to have been launched. Ukraine has only the Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles, which are launched by aircraft. Recently, French AASM Hammer 250 cruise missiles have been regularly used in strikes. Ukraine's own missiles are not visible. The reason remains unclear. Germany has approved the budget for 2026, providing significant funding for Ukraine. On Wednesday, the German government approved the budget for 2026. This was reported by Deutsche Welle. The government approved Finance Minister Lars Klingspell's draft, which provides for expenditures of €520.5 billion, 3.5% more than in the unapproved budget for 2025. Aid to Ukraine in this budget remains at the level previously approved, $8.5 billion in military support. In 2025, the amount of assistance will be up to €9 billion. Germany remains a key partner of Ukraine, supporting it in all areas. Many thanks to Germany, which, after the start of the full-scale invasion, transformed itself from supplying 5,000 helmets to the status of Ukraine's most important partner. Valentina Matvienko arrived in Geneva to speak at a conference of speakers from different countries. According to Bloomberg, it is unclear how Valentina Matvienko, who is under sanctions, was able to get to Switzerland. Sanctions against Russia and Matvienko personally were imposed by the United States and European countries after the start of the full-scale invasion. Valentina Matvienko, who approved Putin's decision to send tanks into Ukraine, has been traveling freely in Europe. Italy and France allowed a Russian government plane carrying the sanctioned Federation Council speaker to fly through EU airspace, including to Geneva, Bloomberg reports. Valentina Matvienko is under sanctions from the United States, the European Union, the United Kingdom and Switzerland, where she arrived. Her plane flew over Turkey and the Mediterranean Sea before arriving in Geneva via Italy. On Wednesday, the plane flew to Moscow via French and Italian airspace. According to Bloomberg, Italy allowed the Russian government plane to enter its airspace at the request of the Swiss government. The Italian government consulted with the French authorities, who had also received a request for overflight before issuing the permit. They issued the authorization jointly. While ballistic missiles are flying at Kyiv, Valentina Matvienko is calmly flying to the European continent, giving speeches and holding meetings. Yesterday, during her speech at a conference, many representatives of delegations from different countries walked out of the room. This is the key news for the morning of July 31st, Thursday. Subscribe, comment, and share your thoughts on Ukraine and the world. Trump's ultimatums were met with Kremlin's silence and drone and missile strikes on Kyiv that morning.